Coming up today, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un backs out of a planned trip to Moscow for a war anniversary event. The Kremlin says Kim cancelled because of internal Korean issues. South Korea expresses deep regret over Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's decision not to sincerely apologize for his country's wartime atrocities during a speech to the US Congress. Plus, 5 days after the devastating earthquake in Nepal, 2 people are pulled alive from the rubble. The hope for finding more survivors, however, continues to fade as poor weather hampers rescue efforts. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, May 1st, Labour Day here in Korea. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning: after weeks of intrigue and speculation, it's finally official. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will not be attending events in Russia next weekend, marking the 70th anniversary of the then Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters on Thursday that Kim has decided to stay in Pyongyang and not attend the May 9th event. He said the decision was related to the North's internal affairs. Now, Russia has repeatedly said the young North Korean leader had confirmed his attendance, although Pyongyang never officially commented on the matter. The trip would have been Kim Jong-un's first overseas trip since he took power in 2011. A US civic group has released satellite images of North Korea that appear to show a public execution. Radio Free Asia reported Thursday that the Washington-based Committee for Human Rights in North Korea made public its analysis report on the photos that were taken last October from above a military training area located near Pyongyang. Analysts identified 6 anti-aircraft machine guns lined up across from some blurry objects with distinct shadows that appear to be people, also lined up side by side on a firing range. Whatever or whoever was in the images was no longer there in another picture taken 9 days later. The committee says the most plausible explanation is that a public execution had taken place there. Moving on to the unresolved issues at the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex, where the standoff over workers' wages continues. The South Korean government is planning to hold high-level talks with North Korea to discuss its unilateral wage hike. But, as our Kim Hyun-bin reports, contact with the North is not proving easy.
No answer. That's Pyongyang's current response to Seoul's previous attempts to set a meeting. Recently, South Korea has tried to make contact through the Kaesong Industrial District Management Committee, with no tangible results.
North Korea's dissatisfaction towards the South Korean government has piled up. It seems like Pyongyang is trying to manage and run the joint industrial complex on its own. That's why they are unwilling to consult with Seoul.
On Thursday, an official from South Korea's Unification Ministry said that, given the silence, Seoul is moving on to propose high-level talks. Experts say the talks need to happen soon.
There are many problems that need to be addressed, but it is unclear how much Pyongyang will actively engage in talks.
North Korea decided to raise the minimum monthly wage by a little over 5% to $74 in March without consulting South Korea. Seoul says the move violated a 2004 agreement that calls for the two sides to set wages together. 18 of the 124 South Korean firms at the complex have already sent out March paychecks. But the Unification Ministry officials said that there have been no slowdowns or strikes by North Korean workers, even though most of their employers have not paid. The joint factory opened in 2004 and employs about 53,000 North Korean workers. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The South Korean government has expressed deep regret that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's speech to the US Congress this week didn't contain a sincere apology to the victims of Japan's wartime atrocities. Our Hwang Sang-yi reports.
Korea slammed Japan on Thursday for missing an opportunity to apologize to the so-called comfort women. In his speech before the U.S. Congress, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe upheld previous apologies and acknowledged Japan had caused suffering in the region. But there was no mention of the 200,000 women forced into sexual slavery by Japan during World War II.
We find it regrettable that there was no acknowledgement or a sincere apology. It could have become a turning point for Japan by achieving true reconciliation and cooperation with neighboring countries through a correct sense of history.
Abe's approach to history outraged some Democratic members of Congress. Ed Royce, the House Foreign Affairs Committee chairman, said Abe must not miss the next opportunity to offer a message of reconciliation. Congressman Mike Kondak called the speech shocking and shameful, and added that the Japanese leader continues to evade his government's responsibility. Now the question is whether Abe's statement on the 70th anniversary of the war's end, due in August, will offer anything more. Most watchers say this congressional address is as apologetic as Abe is going to get.
Well, who knows? He can add a couple of more words, but that wouldn't carry that much meaning for us. So I don't expect he would express any deeper repentance for the Japanese past.
While Abe's U.S. Congress speech has disappointed Koreans, experts say that the best way to move forward is for the two leaders to talk it out. Hwang Sang-yi, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, the majority of Japanese people say Prime Minister Shinzo Abe should apologize for the country's wartime atrocities. During his upcoming statement in August, marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, a recent survey by Japan's Kyodo news agency showed 50.4% of respondents said Abe should mention key words such as remorse and apology for the Asian countries that suffered so terribly under Japan's colonial rule and aggression. As for the revised Japan-US Defense Cooperation Guidelines agreed earlier this week, 48% said they were against the guideline that will give the Japanese military a more expanded global role, while only 36% said they supported the move. Back here in Korea, and the country's main opposition party, the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, is at a crossroads after its crushing defeat in by-elections earlier this week. The party has been left to ponder its future after its shocking performance came despite the ruling party being tangled up in a high-profile bribery scandal. Ji Myung-gil has more.
Opposition leader Moon Jae-in took responsibility for the NPAD's spectacular failure to win any of the 4 National Assembly seats that were up for grabs in Wednesday's by-elections.
I don't blame anyone. I will reflect upon my shortcomings and start over again. I'll try to bring about greater reform and unification.
Disillusioned members of the party are demanding a complete overhaul of the NPAD's policy agenda. They are also expected to push for ways to resolve the internal power struggle between those loyal to former President Roh Moo-hyun on the one side and Kim Dae-jung on the other. Moon Jae-in's leadership is also coming under intense scrutiny, adding to the sense of crisis within the party. The party lost on its home turf of Gwangju and the traditionally left-leaning Seoul district of Gwanak-bi, leading some to say the NPAD has lost its identity as an opposition party. Moon, who lost in the 2012 race to President Park Geun-hye, was being touted as a potential liberal candidate for the 2017 presidential election. But Wednesday's embarrassing loss has put a major dent in his hopes of running for the top job again. On the flip side, the chief of the ruling Saenuri Party, Kim Moo-sung, has cemented his leadership and raised his status as a potential presidential candidate in 2 years' time. Despite the bribery allegations swirling around some of its senior members, the ruling Saenuri Party's impressive performance has given it a mandate to push ahead with its reform drives and economic initiatives.
We urgently need to pass economy-related bills and reform the pension system for public workers. By doing this, we'll be able to pass on a strong and fiscally sound country to the future generations.
The Saenuri Party's victory is also expected to help President Park tighten her grip on state affairs and aid the administration in its push to fight corruption. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
A teenage boy and a woman in her 20s have been pulled alive from collapsed buildings in Kathmandu 5 days after a devastating earthquake hit Nepal, killing almost 5,500 people. Rescuers continue to scour through the rubble in the country, but with such a long time since the quake struck, hopes of finding more survivors are starting to dim now. The 15-year-old boy who was rescued on Thursday said he survived, pinned between floors in the ruins of a building, and stayed as hydrated as he could by sucking water from wet clothes. The woman, also from Kathmandu, said she survived by eating 2 containers of butter. The government in Nepal, which has been heavily criticised for its response to the earthquake, says bad weather is making delivery of relief to remote villages very difficult. A shockingly low first-quarter growth rate in the United States, following China's slowest growth in 6 years, is raising concerns that positive forecasts for this year may not come true. So for more on how this could affect the Korean economy, Gwon-soa reports.
The U.S. posted a sluggish GDP growth of 0.2% in the first 3 months of the year. Shocking, considering that's way below earlier predictions of a 1% rise. The slowdown has been blamed on harsh winter weather, low global crude prices, lower hiring, and the rising dollar. The downturn is affecting the much-talked-about U.S. Federal Reserve rate increase. The Fed is keeping its target interest rate near 0%, where it's been since late 2008. While optimists had anticipated a raise in June, the U.S. Commerce Department's first-quarter figures have shifted the timeline towards September at the very earliest. The disappointment comes just 2 weeks after China's first-quarter GDP came in at 7%, the lowest pace since 2009 after the global financial crisis. The combination of low American and Chinese growth is having an effect on the Korean economy, too.
The global economy was expected to improve this year from last due to a positive outlook for the U.S. But with the sluggish first-quarter results and the fear that China's economy will remain slow, Korea's growth rate could fall too, as these factors will also have an impact on Korean exports.
The U.S. Fed said the first-quarter low growth was due to, quote, transitory factors. Experts say positive data in the housing market, manufacturing sector, and business investment have enough potential to spur growth in the U.S. in the second quarter, translating into a faster pickup in the global economy. Gwon-soa, Arirang News.
And staying with economic news, Korea's industrial output shrank in March from the previous month, pulled down by a sharp decline in electronics and steel products. Data from Statistics Korea shows production across all sectors fell 0.6% in March from a month earlier. The agency attributes the decline to a high base effect in the previous month, when output rose 2.2%, as well as increased overseas production of key electronic parts. Colon cancer is the third most common cancer in the world. In 2012, there were 1.4 million new cases and almost 700,000 deaths from the disease. And believe it or not, Korea accounted for the highest number of cases in the entire world. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Colon cancer has become a common disease in Western countries, but recent data shows that Korea has the world's highest rate. According to the International Agency for Research on Cancer, 45 in every 100,000 Korean people had colon cancer in 2012. That puts Korea at the top of the list for the disease out of 184 countries, followed by Slovakia and Hungary. The figure also far outnumbers the global average, which stood at 17.2. In fact, the number of people in Korea diagnosed with the disease is rising quickly, more than doubling over the past 10 years. Doctors cite a number of reasons for the rapid rise.
It's a disease that's been more common in Europe or North America, but more Koreans are turning to westernized eating patterns and lifestyles, raising colon cancer rates. Also, although more research is needed, it's likely that Koreans have genes that make them more prone to colon cancer.
He also attributed the higher rate to Koreans going through more screenings. The good news is that it's treatable if caught early, though not everyone recognizes the signs. Colon cancer is difficult to detect in the early stages as many people show little or no symptoms. The signs that do indicate there is a problem, such as vomiting or weight loss, are often confused or overlooked with other conditions. Colon cancer cells spread faster than other cancer cells, so a person's chance of survival decreases sharply as time progresses.
We advise people with even slight symptoms to visit the doctor, and those with a history of cancer in the family should get regular screenings, especially those who are over 50 years old.
He says regular exercise and eating more high-fiber foods, such as fruit and vegetables, can significantly reduce a person's chance of getting colon cancer. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you, as always, for watching, and we do hope to see you at the same time on Monday. Goodbye.